Hello again, friends. This is Dennis Foust, Senior Minister of St. John's Baptist Church of Charlotte, North Carolina, with another episode of Midweek Moments. Today, I'm especially going to speak to the members of the church about a survey that we have been participating in during the month of August. The COVID-19 task force of the church, which was an assemblage of about 30 members, including around a dozen medical professionals, we all put our minds together and talked through several different approaches and scenarios for how do we walk through this pandemic together, and then how do we begin to regather at some point in the future when it is safe. We've created several phases that we are using, stages, if you will, phases, and we're currently in phase 2 in North Carolina. And our governor yesterday spent good time on the air yesterday afternoon informing us as residents of North Carolina that we would be in phase 2 for another 5 weeks. I am fully aware that we're ready for this to be over. We're ready to regather. But there are numerous issues, as I think most people understand, that have to be taken into consideration for the good of all. And we're trying to do just that. I am appreciative, deeply appreciative for our COVID-19 task force. Our medical professionals have been giving us good counsel throughout this time, and they continue to be primary resource points for me as I try to make decisions for the good of the church. There are some things that may not come to mind for everyone, and one of those is that when we do begin regathering, we have to make sure that we're taking care of testing or temperatures at the door. We can only sit so many people in a room and observe the social or the physical distancing protocols. We also have to be attentive to the fact that our custodians then have to come in and assume that we've touched everything as we entered or left the facility on those pathways. And so we are trying to pay attention to all of those things. We're also aware that when we do open up, as I'm in touch with other ministers and other churches as well, the majority of congregations who have said we're going to begin gathering again have already stopped. And that doesn't make the news. It makes the news when a congregation begins to gather and a breakout happens. And it makes the news when a congregation that's large decides we're going to start meeting again. What doesn't make the news quite often is when very few people show up and they then are confronted with, what do we do now that our numbers are 35 to 40 people and we have these hundreds of folks that are not going to be gathering as of yet. So we are I want to share with you today the results of the survey to date, through August anyway, and then I want to offer some thoughts for you as to how we're going to walk through at least this next couple of months, and some initiatives that I want to place on the table for us as we begin following Labor Day and possibly in late September, after September 11th, when this 5 weeks end, how we can begin to regather outside, and even in the meantime, some ways that groups are already gathering. So I appreciate the fact that those who are leading our state are trying to be careful, and this is a wonderful state. Good decisions are being made in numerous places, but I know that as this continues, other people are hurting who could get through a shorter time, and as each phase begins to linger, there's more pain and more suffering and more challenges. And so I'm wanting to be sensitive to the people of the congregation and beyond as to how we can help alleviate some of this pain and suffering. So once again, let me say, if you or someone you know is walking through an extremely difficult time, please let me or one of the other ministers of the church know. We are trying to be sensitive and attentive as possible. I promise you that every week I'm having conversations with people who are dealing with anxiety and stress, and some who are walking through very difficult times. And so just know that we are trying to express compassion, offering a listening ear and a presence as much as possible. Our survey involved several questions, about 6 questions. And the first question had to do with which of the following best describes your perspective as we consider a timetable for regathering inside the facilities of St. John's. There were 4 options for you to select. Immediately, no concerns. 13 of you said yes to that. We had 180 responses to this question. Early, I will come back early once we begin regathering, but I will come with several concerns and precautions. 76 of you, or 42% of the respondents, chose that response. So together, the 13 and the 76 say, that's 89 persons, or 49%, say, we will come back immediately with no concerns or precautions, or we will come back early, but with concerns and precautions. So that's good. That's right at 49%, right at 50%. Then there were these 2 responses. Late adopters, those who will come back, but will wait several weeks after we begin regathering to see how things are going in the larger society and so forth. And those who responded not until vaccinated. Now the late adopters was 62 responses yes, or 35%. And those who said not until the vaccination is available and I have it in my body, that was 29 responses, or 16%. So 51% are the late adopters, or not until this thing's over, and 49% come back immediately, no concerns, or with concerns and precautions. So it's about 50-50. And knowing that 50-50 for us means that 50% would say we would begin to come back pretty soon, then I also know that about 50% of that group would be there on any given time we would gather. So I'm trying to, we'll project toward that as we move into September in our planning, and we're going to have some weeks of preliminary and preparation as we prepare for that first regathering event. The second question was, would you be willing to gather in Broach Hall to watch live streaming from the sanctuary to accommodate our need for physical distancing in the sanctuary and caring for our most susceptible members? 92 of you said yes, which is 51%. We also had 180 responses to this question. And no was 37 responses, 20%. Undecided, 53, and 29%. So no and undecided is 90, and yes is 92. So once again, we're at about the 50% result. My supposition is that the 90 are saying, well, it would depend on the quality, and why do I want to sit in Broach Hall and watch a big screen TV, basically from the sanctuary, and it would be for overflow, of course, and those kinds of things, but I get it. So that's, again, 50-50. Question 3, we also had 180 responses to this question. Would our lack of providing choral or congregational singing influence your attendance in the months ahead? As you probably already have heard, choral musicians across the country, around the world, are doing all kinds of creative things, but one thing that cannot happen is for us to gather in enclosed spaces. As the air moves, it just spreads. If there is someone who is carrying the coronavirus in the room and doesn't even realize they're carrying it, we could all be exposed. So would our lack of providing choral or congregational singing influence your attendance in the months ahead? 32 people said yes. And so if some of you who said yes are in the choir, I understand, and we appreciate your ministry among us, but it would affect us. And so that was it would influence you in your time of gathering in a worship experience, and I fully understand that. 120 of you, though, said no. So 28 were undecided. So almost 70% of you said, no, we would still want to gather for some kind of a worship experience. So that is what I'm planning to do, to recommend to the COVID-19 task force, that we will begin our gatherings, and we will probably not begin gathering until late September at the earliest, and most likely even into October on a regular basis, but we'll probably try to use September to ramp up to some gatherings. Again, if things progress in positive ways over these next couple of months. Are you interested in participating in outdoor gathered church opportunities? 90 of 181 respondents said yes. 25 said no, and 66 were undecided. So that's 50% yes, 36% undecided, and 14% no. So what that says to me is we can begin going ahead after this phase 2 ends, and even toward the end of phase 2 probably. We've had a few groups that have had gatherings in backyards trying to observe that 10 or less in most occasions. I think one group had maybe a little bit more than 25 outside when they gathered, but it's okay if your Sunday morning growth group wants to gather in someone's backyard. Some groups have done that. Paula and I have been able to gather with a couple of different large groups outside of 20, 25 people or so, and so just know that we would encourage you to initiate that on your own in your group life, and we will probably be planning some of those down the road. Now, question 5 is a little more complicated because it had multiple options for you to select, as you may know. There were 264 different responses of the 180 or so people who completed the survey, but there were 264 different responses that were checked on the survey. And I'm not going to read through each of these. What I am going to say to you that the staff is going to be reviewing all of this data and letting this guide us as we make changes going forward beyond August. For example, we as ministers have been offering what we call open Zoom calls. Mine happens right over here on my back porch on Mondays from 5 to 6, and it's sent out to the congregation, and anyone in the church family that wants to just come in on Zoom and see other church members on a Zoom call, and we have an hour conversation quite often about whatever's the topic on the table. I'm not making a presentation of or a devotional thought, or you don't have to listen to me preach or anything, but you just come in, and I have most weeks anywhere from 8 to 20 people who will show up during that time. But we're each doing that on a different day. One of the things that we're becoming aware of is that we probably can move this to just offering one a week and rotating as ministers like we do minister on call. And so that's one change that you can expect after Labor Day that we will begin to implement. Midweek moments, only 17% of you are seeing this, according to the survey, and which means that 83% of you are just somewhat looking at midweek moments or never have looked at midweek moments. So I'm going to cut back a little bit or reevaluate what we need to do with midweek moments. And again, there are other things here. Now, that said, worship by video, 7 answered they have never watched it. Now, if they could complete the survey, they could also watch the video worship. So thank you for being honest. That's very important to us in compiling this data. 44 or 18% said somewhat, we've watched now and then, but 188 of you checked that you had watched almost regularly, numerous times, frequently were the responses. And so that's 79% of you. So we feel as if our video worship, we're going to try to make enhancements on it and try to improve it as we go forward, but we appreciate your support of what we're trying to do with this. And so the family news, 88% of you who responded, 167 responded to that you are reading the family news to keep up with what's going on. So thank you for that. And then the last question, of course, had to do with the ages that were represented in the survey, which is important data as we interpret and analyze what you've told us. I can say to you that those who are of age in the households that were responding, 43 respondents are 29 years of age or younger. 116 respondents are age 30 to 69, and 85 are 70 years of age or older. So we will take that into consideration even as we analyze and interpret the data that I've shared with you. Now I know that's a lot of stuff and a lot of numbers and may not make sense to any of you, but we're using this as we try to guide us forward through this time. We're going to continue to try to stay in touch. We will come up with other creative ways. Later, between now and next Wednesday, I will be interviewing Nate and Emma Dove and trying to introduce them to you in a little bit more conversational fashion. And we'll be putting that out here on Midweek Moments for the next 2 or 3 weeks. And then once we get past Labor Day and then September 11th, as this 5 weeks of phase 2 extends beyond that time, into that time, we'll be making other decisions going forward. But when I listened to Dr. Mandy Cohen of our state and medical leadership, as she goes down and explains folks in the hospital and the testing and the results and how that all goes on, as schools are getting started again, as all of the colleges and universities and people from all over the world come to North Carolina, and then students return home or interact with other students in the workplace and those folks go home. I think this next 5 weeks will offer some new data and some new information as to how we see this moving throughout our state. Now, that said, we have had cases of COVID-19 among our membership. The good news is they've all either been light cases, the people have responded well to medications or to treatment, and we are right now not dealing with any serious or critical cases of this. I know some of you have been tested and you've come back negative. Some of you have had false positives, and I am enjoying hearing those stories, and I'm having to just take all of that into account with all of this planning. I assure you, no one is missing the gathering aspects of St. John's life any more than I am. I know there are a bunch of us that are missing it a lot, but no one is missing it any more than I am. And when I gather with families and we're around a cemetery spot or we're in Memorial Garden, I am saddened all over again, deeply saddened that we cannot celebrate lives and the ministries of these lives the ways in which St. John's does so well and care for the families during this time. We've had a couple of weddings throughout this time, and we celebrated with these couples as best we could. We have another wedding coming up in September that I'm excited about sharing in, but saddened that we cannot celebrate this unity in marriage the ways in which we had planned. So all of that said, and rambling on as I am probably, this is what I'm visualizing right now. I'm visualizing we will continue to plan towards some outdoor gatherings and encouraging existing groups to have some outdoor gatherings on your own, and with physical distancing and mask wearing and protecting one another. I expect us to also offer some congregationally planned outdoor opportunities. Once we get past September 11th, we'll step into that. And I'm thinking right now, anyway, that once it's safe to do so, we will open the sanctuary for some kind of a gathering between Sundays. Because if we just televise whatever we do in there on a Sunday morning, it's going to be a room, a sanctuary, that's going to sound empty because it's going to be about a third full. And we'll be putting that out to everyone as if that's the worship experience, with no music, no capacity to sing. So we're going to continue to do what we're doing online and try to add something as a gathering opportunity in the sanctuary whenever it is safe to do so. That will probably somewhere in the midweek time. And we'll alert you, of course, far ahead before that begins. But I don't foresee that occurring now until sometime into October or November, but some outdoor gatherings prior to that. Our worship this Sunday continues the Beatitudes focus, and next Sunday, this week we talk about, we will be thinking together about being peacemakers in the world. The following week, we'll be, on the 16th, we'll be talking about and worshiping around the idea of persecution for righteousness' sake. And then on the 23rd, we will conclude this series as we focus on being salt and light in the world. And then on Sunday, September 30th, Reverend Nate Dove will be bringing the message on that day. So we look forward to his first time of sharing a message with us in worship. And then on August 6th, Leah Benton, who is longtime member of St. John's and is attending Union Seminary right now here in the city. And so Leah is going to bring the message on that day, on that Sunday, September 6th. Now, we are trying to focus in on this one anothering. And I'm already hearing some reports of what you're doing, and I'm glad to hear those reports. And if you are willing to do so, please write up a little statement of what it meant to you to get a phone call or a note, and send those to Derek at dhenson@sjcharlotte.org, and let him share that with us. We are continuing to work with our community partners and to initiate ministries to individuals as we're able to do so. We are partnering with folks outside and beyond our buildings. You are reading in the family news of opportunities for service that are there. Please continue to be supportive of all of these ways that we're trying to be church in the world, to live this blessed life. As we are one anothering, I am always reminded of how some of our folks are walking through this time and how I can't be with them. But I showed you this work of art several weeks ago as a reference in worship. This was made by Gene Poole, and it's basically just a branch or a root of a vine, and he turned it into a walking stick and gifted that to me last year sometime when I was visiting with them. But every time that I see this walking stick, I think of Gene and Carol, their family, and how they are walking through this time, how they are walking through Gene's suffering, health issues, and his weakening. And I'm reminded that each one of us right now is feeling limitations, not to the extent that Gene and Carol are experiencing limitations, but we are. And so this reminds me of how a fellow with wonderful skills and vision and work ethic, compassion, touches my life every day when I look over, and I keep this close to one of the chairs that I spend some time reading in every day, just so it's right there with me. I hope that you're experiencing some moments in the midst of this time that is renewing a spirit within you, that is inspiring you, helping you to pray with clarity, and helping you to deepen your walk with the Spirit of God within you. I love you. I appreciate you. I miss you. And I look forward to being with you outdoors and indoors, in small groups, and one day, once again, in a large group. Shalom.